I grew up in church, and I I was brought to church at a very young age, and then my whole life was raised up loving Jesus. And at a certain time in my life, I started to feel a lot of rebellion because it didn't seem that anything I did was good enough. If it didn't matter if I was perfect in school, perfect in my job, it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it right for my family or for my church members. And so I started to just stray from God. And eventually, it just took me down the wrong path. And then I met Dustin, and we were just basically living that life together.
I was more into church when I was younger. That was it was a good base. I knew who Jesus was, and I had given my life to Him as a younger person. I don't know if I realized what that meant, but I was baptized. But as I got into like middle school and high school, uh, I had moved a couple times and kind of got away from a home base of a church, and then I moved in with my dad when I was 16, and then like there was no more attending church at all. So then it was just a kind of a empty spot, an empty void, and that's when I kind of turned to drugs and alcohol and friends. I remember playing football until a certain point in time until I got arrested at a party and got kicked off the team, and so that was kind of like a turning point. That was kind of it, and then I was all in on the alcohol. I changed friend groups and everything.
I grew up in church, so there was lots of feelings of guilt and shame when we started to decide that we wanted to get divorced. And I always felt that if I started a marriage or if I was in a relationship, that was the one, and I wasn't going to go into another relationship. So there was lots of guilt and shame surrounding those times, and I didn't know what to do.
As I kind of made the adjustment into the drugs and alcohol, I just kind of felt like God didn't want anything else to do with me, and I had gotten to a point where I didn't feel that I would ever be able to get back. So the void, the just the emptiness that I felt I was using, I would use more. I would try to use drugs that would make me calm down and give me peace, and then I would probably be too low, and then I would try to use drugs that would bring me back up, and so I would just try to equal out that and try to find some kind of peace and some kind of good without God. If He wasn't, if He didn't want anything to do with me, which is what the enemy had told me, I thought that I would want to somehow coexist with everybody to where it would be okay, but it just that void. I would try to put people into that place, and I would try to without any kind of sense of balance, and I would just destroy every single relationship that I had gotten into.
I guess it was the same for me because I didn't feel that I could make my way back to God. I was always taught that once you made mistakes and that you had strayed from the way that you were taught and that you turned your back on God, even for a moment, that He would turn you over to a reprobate mind and that you couldn't be forgiven from that sin because God had given you a chance, and that you basically like spit in His face. So at this point, I had no idea how to make my way back, and I just used drugs and alcohol and anything I could just to make me feel happy or just to make me feel calm, and because I had no way out. I'd say the things that led to our separation and divorce were just basically our lifestyle choices. We didn't have a life that was founded in a solid foundation. We just basically listened to everyone around us, and we were living a lifestyle that wasn't good for a family. At this point, we had I'd say about a 2-year old little girl, and I wanted the best for her, and I wanted us to be a family, but it didn't matter what I did to try to make it better. Everything was just falling apart. And so at a certain point, we just gave up. There was no choice but to do that.
We were working separate shifts, so I was working the night shift, she was working the day shift to be able to keep up with bills and things, and it just every single night I'd get off of work and want to go to the bar, and so just drink myself into oblivion. I think how many nights that I would not even make it into the house. I would drink till the bars would close. I would drive my truck. We had a small hill in our front yard, and I'd make it up that front hill, and I would just shut the truck off and fall asleep in there. But it created so much resentment and so much problems in there that we eventually, to make things work, we had swift shifts because I wasn't responsible enough to work the night shift. So I started working the day shift. But at that point in time, just because of where we worked and the influences we had around her, then it turned out to be the opposite. Then I would be home, and then she would do the same thing, to where she would be out and go out after work and not come home, and those things. And so it just compiled over there, and it just kind of at the end just kind of broke us.
I guess we all come to a point where we just have to, like, there's no other way to do it but to turn to God. And I came to a point, and I'd say when Skylar was about 7 or 8 years old, that we were always around each other. We were friends at this point. We had, tried to do our very best to co-parent. We were always at each other's houses in one way or another, but our lifestyle had went so far the wrong way that Dustin had, I mean, he was very heavily into cocaine and pills and marijuana and alcohol. And we always tried to keep that life separate from our parenting life. But it had started to bleed over, and there was some things that had happened that I didn't want to even be around him at that point. And I was worried that he would end up in prison or dead. And I just turned to God one night and was like, could you please, Lord, is there anything that you can do? Just do it for him. I know you don't want to hear me. I know you don't care about me anymore, but would you just please save him? So please do something.
So it was October 3rd, 2014. Hindsight, it was probably 3 or 4 days after she had prayed for me. I was at work. We were putting in, it was an underground irrigation system. We had, I had been, every day I'd put in my headphones and listen to Pandora radio. It was, I remember the exact song that was on when it switched. It was, I listened to John Mayer radio, and it was "Fathers, Be Good to Your Daughters." I remember that clearly. And I don't know if there was a shuffle, there was something in my pocket or whatever, but it switched from John Mayer radio to Christian contemporary radio. But I didn't realize it switched right at first. The song, a song would come on, and it would give me a question. It would generate a question for God in my brain. And I remember the next song would come on, and it would answer the question from the song before. And this happened for 2 or 3 songs before I kind of realized what was going on, and just kind of felt. Just, it was overwhelming at that time, but I really felt that God was trying to reach out to me. And so I remember thinking, like, God, if this is what I think it is, I just show me something. And it was just crazy on how the next moment my phone started ringing, and one of those songs that said, "When I call your name, be ready. When I call your name, be ready." And I picked my phone up out of my pocket, and I looked down. It was an incoming call, and it said Dustin DeWalt, and it had a picture of me from my Facebook profile. And, like, it was there. It was like. And so I answered the phone, and it just immediately hung up. But that at that time, it was what I'd prayed for, and I don't know how to explain the weight, because I don't think I weighed. I know I did weigh 200 pounds at that time, being strung out on the drugs that I was on. But to have that weight just lift off of my chest, I can explain away the phone accidentally changing stations in my pocket. I can explain away the phone ringing and having a picture, but I cannot explain away the feeling of God, just the release, the weight just lifted off my shoulders, and I just felt so free and so peaceful. And at that time, I had I just felt like God just knew me, like, and he called, and he had been just reaching out directly to me. And from what I used to feel of God being so far away and way up there, just kind of looking down, and then, but this was like an intimate thing. And so I had went. I still had. I was selling drugs to supplement my income. I had went. I had a guy, he would give me the drugs and I would sell them and then I would pay him back. And so I couldn't at this point, like, I was like, I'm done. I mean, I'm free. I don't want to do this anymore. So I had to pay for these drugs. So I called everybody that I had sold to, and I'd given them my, I laying them out on the front porch. I remember, and I just gave them my testimony, like, this is it. This is what God's doing in my life. This is the last time you can get anything from me. And they bought, and I said, and I remember having like everything paid for, and then like $20, $22, something like that left over. It wasn't a lot. And I still had a bunch of drugs left over, so I pulled everybody into the bathroom, and I remember just dumping them into the toilet and watching everybody freak out as I flushed them down the toilet, and that was kind of it. And then the extra $20 we went to Books a Million and bought a Bible with it, and so that was it. So I had went and given my testimony to my best friend, and at the time he went to Church of the King. We were going. We were like testing churches at that time. We were just visiting different ones. So I wasn't actually going to the church then, but I had given my testimony to him. He's like, "You've got to check out this Bible study on Wednesday mornings. You'll really like it." And so I remember my first time they set up a table in the foyer, and it was there was like 6 guys there, and I remember giving my testimony to Pastor Todd, and just him being so encouraging and so just man, that's it, that's awesome, and just kind of giving the assurance I needed that was God, because people around me at the time or whatever was just not. They were like, "Man, that's the drugs you're on. I don't know what's going on with you. You ate something bad." And so I started just going that to that Bible study every Wednesday, and just it kind of the group, the guys, that it became what I was praying for, because my friends had all kind of abandoned me, and they were like, "Man, you need to go find Christian friends." And so I kind of just was getting building a relationship with that, and it was huge.
Pastor Todd was my friend from work. And so he came home one day and showed me a flyer that he had been given for the men's Bible study. And I was like, oh my goodness, I know him very well. He's been my regular customer at a local restaurant for like 7 years. And it was really, it just made me feel a lot better to know, because I knew what kind of people the church staff was from Church of the King. And I actually knew almost all the church staff really well at this point. So it was just kind of like a sign, like, hey, like, this is the real deal. This is really what God wants us to do. And then we started visiting Church of the King after that, and it just felt like home right away.
Well, we were going to other churches or whatever, and I wanted to serve at that time. I mean, I was on fire. I just wanted to do something more. I remember praying, like, "God, just plug me in somewhere." And I would even sign up at these places, and no one would call, no one would reach out. I was like, man, I'm just, they don't want me on the serve team. That's for sure. And I remember the first time that we visited Church of the King, I was like, "Man, you've got to serve. You got to do something." I'm like, I don't know what I'd be good at. I don't know what. They're like, "You can be on the prep team." And so I was like, "All right." And so I remember just that was it. I would go, and it was like God answering my prayer. Like, and then so I'd go on the prayer team and go up in the front, and that was the start of me feeling at home there and just being on that team.
So we started to come back together a little bit at a time. He would show up at my house every morning with coffee, and we had a little devotion book. what's the name of it?
Jesus calling.
Jesus Calling, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was into that, and I really enjoyed that, and God was starting to really work in me that I could have a relationship with Him again. But I was not convinced about a marriage or anything like that. And He come and told me that He had had a phone call, and at the time, we had had a picture together at the casino one night, and we had never posted it on social media. We had never put it anywhere where anybody else could see because we didn't want people to think we were together. And he had had a phone call, and it had a picture of us together, and that had never been shown to anybody else. So he was convinced that God was calling him just like He had the first time, and letting him know there was lots of like really unexplained supernatural things that were going on. And I was just like, "You're crazy. This isn't how God works for me. He just speaks to me. But you know what? If that's the way He speaks to you, that's fine. But you're crazy." But we started to just get back together a little bit at a time because I saw the changes that were really happening. The Bible studies, we had moved back in together and were giving it a try. And when he would normally be coming home from the bar, he was getting up and going to Bible study. And then he would come home and he would tell me about it, and he would go to work. So I was convinced that this was a real change in his life. And then I started to see just the positive things that were happening in our family. Our daughter was, of course, ecstatic that we were back together and that we were a family again. So it was just it was supernatural, the things that were happening.
It was nice. I remember just that feeling of I don't know, when everything washed away and everything was completely clean. It was clean slate. I just It kind of washed away all the negative things that I had thought and all the bad. And I just wanted my family back. I just wanted to be. If God's going to make everything else whole, He's going to make my family whole again too. And I couldn't see myself in any other. We'd been divorced for 6 years, so we didn't move on. We didn't do anything. We were actually better friends at the end of that than we were at the even when we were married the first time. So just to rebuild that was super important to me. And as we got back, so it was about 6 months or so we were dating, and we were back together. And it was at one of these men's Bible studies in the morning. I showed up, and it was. I told Pastor, I was like, "Man, it's Labor Day," and he's like, "Yeah." I was like, and it's Carissa's birthday," and he goes, "And it's your wedding day," and I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "Maybe." I was like, we could probably make that work. And so I after that Bible study, I was like, "You can do it today?" And he said, "Yeah." After the Bible study, I called all Carissa's friends and family, and I was like, "We're gonna have a surprise wedding tonight." I was like, "She doesn't know about it. I'm gonna set it up as a counseling session. I'm gonna call and tell her that it's her birthday, and I'm gonna take her out to dinner." And so she's we're going to do that. And so everybody's like, "Oh, I can make it. I can make it." And so everybody came to Church of the King. It was all set up. We had the music, the photography, everything was ready. And I told her that we were going to, before we went to dinner, we had to go meet for like a pre-marriage counseling deal, and walked in. And she didn't see all the cars outside.
It was
And so we went in and met Pastor Todd in the hall. And he's like, "Is there something you need to tell her?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Man." And I was like, "Oh yeah, we're getting married today." And so we walked from
I thought he was joking.
and so we walked from the lobby into the church, and the music started playing, and went up there, and we got married on her birthday. It was 2015, so it was about a year and a month, or a year and 11 months after all of this happened, that we were back together officially.
I was really blessed to have another child. I always wanted a big family, but it didn't seem that that was going to happen. And the whole time that we were divorced, I never wanted to start another relationship with anyone else. And we were apart for about 6 years. So it's a long time to be divorced and to to be trying to move on. So when we remarried, I really wanted another baby, and he wasn't convinced, but I was laden on thick, a lot of tears and stuff, and so I've said, look, if it's God's will, then we'll get pregnant right away. And like 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with her. Um, and so she was just a blessing, and I felt that it was God's like redemption in our life, and that He had given us a second chance to do our family the right way. And there was lots of times that marriage is not easy, and even living for God, there's going to be a lot of things. The devil comes at you hard. He is really going to do everything in his power to knock that down. And there was lots of times that I wanted to give up. It's not like our struggles with our past just went away. It's not like we all of a sudden didn't have any of the same struggles that we had when we were in the world. We had all of those struggles still, but we had His Spirit in us, and we had Him to guide us. And so I was given that chance. And every time that I would get to the point where I was just like, no, I don't want to do this anymore, I had another child that I couldn't let down. I couldn't let my children down. I couldn't just give up on what God had given us. And so she just brought a lot of joy to our life. That we already had a lot of joy in our life, but this was just like the icing on the cake.
So one of the first small groups that we gotten in after was very early into the to the marriage process, which coming together after being divorced for 6 years, even though God supernaturally, I feel, put it back together, was still difficult. It was really rough. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of distrust. There was a lot of just like I thought it was just going to be boom, magically all 100% good, and it wasn't. It was actually, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And so we joined Freedom Group, and it was we go through. Every week we would show up and we'd split apart and go through whatever was going on with Freedom, and then we'd come back, and it just something happened during that small group session. We went to a retreat, and it transformed our new marriage from the rockiness that it was to it kind of. I think because of the relationships we built with the people that we went through Freedom with, it was a pretty turbulent time to go through all of that and to come back. I remember taking we write things down on a piece of paper, and we would physically nail them to a cross during one of those during those sessions. And I just felt like it was just we were nailing all that old stuff through, and it just redemption. That's kind of what I felt. If there's a group, that was it.
Yes. Well, Freedom is a 10-week Bible study. And you basically go through all the parts of your life that you have problems with: marriage, infidelity, like relationships that you shouldn't have had, like witchcraft, everything that you may have experienced in the world. And you basically go through it with the Word of God and just cast out all those things in your life. So the groups that we started to become part of, the Word of God was getting instilled in us, and then we were forming relationships with other Christians and having people to support us and to lift us up and to minister to us whenever we were having those struggles. And we went in there, and basically you just form friendships that you wouldn't have otherwise.
So I started leading a group for. I felt God, after everything I've been through, called me to help with addictions and people to overcome things. And I didn't. For me, it was the very beginning of my walk with Christ or whatever, and I had not really. Alcohol. I didn't feel like if I was going to have a drink of alcohol, I was going to go to hell for it or anything like that. But I couldn't put a phone. But I knew it wasn't for me. I knew it wasn't something that I should partake in. And so it came in to where there was a group of guys that kind of needed something. I guess just a spot to go. So I started leading a group on Wednesday nights. It was an Overcomers group. It's for people who are dealing with the hurts, hang-ups, and habits is where it started. We were going through book studies, and it gave me a purpose. It gave me a sense of why not to. It gave me a sense of God used that time to listen to other people and their problems and what they were going through to really heal and to know I wasn't alone, that there was other out there. But instead of focusing on the problems and what we were all going through, we were just looking at the solution and just kind of getting a fresh identity in Christ, and it just really helped. It put me to a point of I still meet every Wednesday. So this has been 9 years now that we meet every Wednesday at the same time. I remember telling God, I was like, this time is yours. And for a while, before it got a lot of traction, there would be many nights that I would meet there by myself. It would just be me showing up and spend that time prayer, but I never gave up the time from that. And it's helped. And now it's turned into such a relationship. The guys that I go to Wednesday night group with are some of my best friends now, and we continue to meet every Wednesday, even though I feel that we have overcome, but even some, it just kind of, it's just a revolving door, but it's really cemented. Like I said, sober for 9 years now. So 2014 will be 10 years in October. So it's a big deal.
God spoke to me a couple of years ago and just basically told me that transparency was where he wanted me, that I wasn't supposed to just keep the testimony that God had given me to myself, that he didn't want me to try to hide behind the I'm perfect or I'm a good Christian or I'm just this put together person, that God wanted me to share those things with the people around me, wherever it may be at the grocery store, at the gym, at work, whatever it was. And so I've just tried to come at it from like God's given me a chance, and he gives us each a chance every day. And the things that we do with every day matter. And it doesn't matter whether or not we are a Christian for 20 years or 5 years or 2 days. Those our ministry is whoever is around us at that moment. It may, whether it be our children, by the love of Christ that we show to them, the grace and the mercy that we show to them whenever they make mistakes, or whether it's that person that does us wrong at the job or in our just daily lives. We have a chance to show God's love to them in every day. And so I've just tried to share my story as many times as possible, whether I'm very open with my kids about what life was like before I gave my life to him, so that they understand what he has done for us. And then friends and people that I meet, it doesn't matter where you're at. God wants you to pray for someone. God wants you to talk to someone about your story and to let them know what he does.
So I believe that there's such a hunger out there for God, and I don't think that most people understand what they're hungry for. I don't even think that they know what they're looking for. But that for God is there, and so for me, I just want to make sure that the growth is with the people around us, that we can pour into them. That there's if we could. That feeling of loss, that feeling of hopelessness, that feeling of not having anything to live for was so deep and so prevalent in my life that there's people out there that feel like that now. There's people out there that have no idea how good it feels to be known, how good it feels to have Christ, in your life, to have that feeling. And so my mission is I want everyone to feel that. And so to take it, so if there's anything that I want to grow in, I guess it's just being able to live a life that is so, I guess that people don't even have to ask if I'm a Christian. Like it's so attractive that people want to gravitate towards it. And so that would be it for me.
I definitely feel the same way. I want us to become just such a light and a beacon to others that they can't deny the change and the things in our lives that have happened. There's lots of people that we were friends with that just didn't want anything to do with us afterwards. And we fast forward almost 10 years, and some of those same people are still around, and they cannot deny the work that God did in our life. But I know that He has more to do. God has led us to be, to lead children, to lead others to Him, and that is our goal every single day.